Hello, AP Psychology. So we're on Unit 4, Learning. So we're going to go through the introduction learning, conditioning, and then social and cognitive factors. All right, here we go. Oh, sorry. Let's move this over. Professional as always, I am. All right, so types of learning. So, one approach and frame of thought during the mid 20th century that profoundly influenced psychology was the discovery of learned behavior. The idea that behavior is based on experience. So, learning, as we use the definition in this course, is the process of acquiring new and relatively enduring information or behaviors. So, I think that's something we talked about when we learned this the first time, right? Learning, I think some of us kind of envision you sitting at a desk at school being taught a lesson, or even sitting at home now and just listening to me is learning, I hope, because you're getting new information. But it's also behaviors. So habits, which take about 66 days to form, which is kind of amazing, are included in the learning. So how you behave, your actions. A more specific type of learning discovered is associative learning, which is learning that learning that certain events occur together. So, for example, I had to think for a second. My son, he knows that he gets up, he has to have a diaper change, and then he gets his milk. He knows that those events occur together. So if I'm taking a little bit too long changing this kid in the morning, he gets annoyed because he's like, yo, next event is milk. I want my milk. So the idea that associative learning, that one thing follows the other. So classical conditioning is learning to anticipate, and with operant conditioning, it is associating punishments and reinforcements with certain behaviors. So that's the definition. I'm not going to go over that now because the next several slides are going to go super deep into what does that mean. But those are the definitions that you may want to store or write down in case you need to use them for the exam or learn them for the exam, because we're going to talk about cheating. You probably already heard about it in the weekly video. So behaviorism itself is a field of psychology that believes psychology should be an objective science that studies behavior without a reference to mental processes, and ignores cognitive learning, your brain basically. So behaviorism, I'm going to say, is something that's not, there's no one out there right now that's like a pure behaviorist, because we understand that you learning is not just about processing a behavior, but it has to do with your mental capacities, your observations, right? We talk about modeling. So psychologists agree that psychology should be an objective science. We all believe that studies behavior. However, no credible psychologists support the idea that mental processes should be ignored, right? I mean, we just spent an entire unit on your brain and cognition. So this is there, like I said, there aren't any pure behaviorists out there. So we're going to start with classical conditioning. And that's pioneered by Pavlov. We all know what's coming up soon then with Pavlov's name, right? The dog. But it's where one learns to associate two or more stimuli with an anticipated event. So it teaches one to prepare for a good or a bad development on certain stimuli has been received, a sound, a touch, etc. So I guess I'm in a way trying to condition my son to not bang his feet on the floor. Make a very mean sound of no, but it's not working because he's laughing at me instead. But the idea is that he should be no, right? Should elicit I stop a behavior. It's not working, but that's what's supposed to happen. Pavlov's famous experiment, the dog. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to hear about the dog again. We know we, we know is famous. We gotta go through it again. So he took an unconditioned, so an untaught stimulus, food, and then he noted the relationship to the unconditioned response, saliva, meaning the dog sees food, it salivates. Neither one of those are taught. When I see food or smell food, I salivate. No one taught me to do that. Those are unconditioned, right? And then a bell, which shouldn't have any response from the dog's unconditioned salivation, would be the neutral stimulus. So after feeding the dog several times, immediately after the bell, Pavlov noticed that the previously neutral stimulus, the bell, became a conditioned stimulus. The bell now caused the dog to salivate. The dog learned to anticipate food following the bell, right? So his natural, I don't know if the dog is a male, but the dog's natural reaction to salivate to food is now being conditioned to salivate to the sounds of a bell. So salivating now became the conditioned response to hearing the bell. Okay, so again, it's the very famous, Pavlov's dog. We know that one. So John Watson, he furthered behaviorism in humans with baby Albert. That experiment where he conditioned the baby to fear furry animals by using loud noises as a conditioned stimulus. We went over this. Many of you mentioned the baby Albert in one of your responses. Oh, the quarantine house response, which I loved reading, by the way. I hope you liked writing. But yeah, you can look further into that if you don't remember it. That made us all sad, right? All right, so they're breaking down now all the terms that you should know. Some folks didn't like this picture that's on the next slide. Why is the dog like chained to that spot? Because, we're doing an experiment. Anyways, all right, so classical conditioning. You need a neutral stimuli, NS, a stimulus that elicits no response before conditioning. You rang the bell before, dog isn't going to do anything except for maybe look and go, what's that sound, right? Unconditioned response, natural response to a stimuli. When you smell or see food, you salivate. That's an unconditioned response. It's what you do. Then there's the unconditioned stimulus, the stimulus that naturally and automatically triggers the scent or the taste. Conditioned response, right? This is the change. A conditioned response to a previously neutral stimulus. So now you're salivating or the dog is salivating at a bell. The conditioned stimulus, an originally irrelevant stimulus that is now paired with an unconditioned stimulus to trigger a condition, it's the bell. So basically whatever causes the change is the conditioned stimulus. And if you want to check this out for a second, here is the image. Some of you were hurt by this. You thought the dog was being, I don't know. Maybe you think now that the experiment was unethical, the dog didn't have a chance to say anything. But I mean, anything really bad happened, he's just salivating to the sound of a bell. I don't know. I'll shut up, let you look at this for a second. Okay, class, so if these videos go over, I think like 18, 19, 20 minutes, I can't put on YouTube, and I like having them on YouTube because they're all in the same spot, and I like things organized, and I feel like if my computer dies and the video dies with it, I'll be sad. So, I'm going to stop here. The next video, we're going to continue with behaviorism, but we're going to move on to operant conditioning.